Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at another buffed Pokemon in the Might and Mastery season of Go Battle League, and that is Shadow Sableye. Shadow Sableye did receive 2 buffs. First off, Foul Play is now cheaper. It does also do slightly less damage, but the increase in pacing is massive for Sableye, and it also has access to Dazzling Gleam. I tested out Dazzling Gleam on my Shadow Sableye. I ended up preferring Power Gem, so in these battles, I'm going to be running the newly buffed Foul Play and Power Gem. But after trying it for a bit, Shadow Sableye felt amazing to use. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and we're off to a great start in game number 1. Positive lead and a positive counter switch as well. Opponent safe switches into Drift Blim, and right off the bat, the quicker pacing of Shadow Sableye getting to the Foul Play in 5. 665 is just unworkable pacing if you're going to have the glassiness of Shadow Sableye. So now that it has straight 5 pacing, Sableye suddenly feels a lot better to play. We're able to land a Power Gem as well. And just like that, Sableye basically KOs 2 Pokemon by itself. I'm going to send in Weezing, expecting the opponent to blind throw a Crunch. To their credit, they do react in time to go for the Aqua Tail, but it's a Azumarill in the back. And now, thanks to the double Sludge Pokemon that I've teamed up here with the Shadow Sableye, we're going to have a pretty straightforward win. Now, I get to fire off another Sludge. And this Sludge, I mean, they can shield all they want, but they're still going to be in a very difficult position. They are now 1 away from their next Ice Beam, so I'm going to do something evil. Throw a Fairy Wind, wait a turn, and force a CMP tie. That right there is going to slam the door on any chances my opponent had to flip this game. They can go for an undercharge on the Ice Beam, but I can just switch into the Swampert. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Swampert versus Superior. This is a nightmare lead. I'm going to save switch to Shadow Sableye. And the nice thing is that if they stay in, I can make the Foul Play before they make the Frenzy Plant. This is why having that straight 5 pacing is so impactful. So just like that, their Superior is half HP, and now they send in Dunsparce. I'm very surprised to see Dunsparce this season. I don't think Dunsparce is very good anymore post-rollout rework. I think that a Pokemon like Blastoise just does what you want Dunsparce to do, but a lot better. Here, I try for the Power Gem. In hindsight, I think I should have just gone for the Foul Play. The Foul Play wouldn't have knocked out, but it would have put it into Mudshot downrange, which would have been good. Whereas now, because I did get a little bit greedy, I'm actually going to lose quite a bit of HP here to the Drill Runs. I'm going to farm up to the back-to-back. They're not going to let that happen. They're going to aggressively switch in Superior, and Superior is going to play to a CMP tie that it does not win. And now I'm just going to let this Swampert go and trust in Galarian Weezing. Unfortunately, I do get the 1 turn bring in, which is a little bit tough. But I am going to be shielding up everything here and then looking to overfarm as much as possible and then go for a CMP tie to Superior's next move. I need to exit with a lot of residual energy on the Weezing. So now, when my opponent brings in their final Pokemon, which is Morpeko, I'm in a great spot because Sludge does so much damage to Morpeko. There's a switch into Dunsparce, and Dunsparce will immediately be met with the Sludge. I will need to overfarm to make sure that I can outpace that Morpeko. So I am going to be shielding up as Dunsparce fires off their energy, and then I'm going to go for the Brutal Swing. This leaves me 1 off of the next Brutal Swing, and I believe the Morpeko should be 2 off of their move. So they send in Morpeko, but they cannot get to their charge attack, as Shadow Galarian Weezing, so spammy, able to sweep the endgame. Great lead for Swampert. Swampert is going to lead into a Drapion. There's a Malamar save switch, and Shadow Sableye is going to do great into Malamar. The one thing I'm not quite accustomed to just yet is the new pacing on Malamar. So I actually end up having to go down a shield here. Realistically, I could have thrown sooner. I'm just not super familiar with the new pacing yet, it being 10-10 instead of 12-11. So it did throw me for a bit of a loop there, but as the season goes on, I'll definitely get more comfortable with that new adjusted pacing. And now, back in comes the Drapion, and Drapion just takes so much damage from Power Gem. Power Gem is going to connect. They do get a farm down, but again, Sableye is able to KO close to 2 of my opponent's 3 Pokemon in multiple games so far. They have their own Sableye. I'm going to grab the shield and send in Shadow Galarian Weezing. Shadow Galarian Weezing, so spammy, already at the Brutal Swing. Unfortunately, buffed Sludge is not going to do anything for me in this endgame, but it doesn't have to. This is where the pacing on Brutal Swing is quite nice. I end up shielding a bait, and that means I believe this could be a Power Gem. So I'm holding my breath, but it's a Dazzling Gleam. So this is a spot where if my opponent had Power Gem, they could have won because that would have KO'd, but they had Dazzling Gleam, so it will not. And now I'm able to switch back in the Swampert as Drapion hits the field. Drapion Crunch is going to do some pretty significant damage, but they cannot get the second charge attack needed, and I'm able to escape with a win. Swampert versus Galarian Moltres, and it's a shiny Galarian Moltres as well, so a pretty great flex from my opponent. I'm going to overfarm a lot of energy. I wanted to wait until my opponent went for a Brave Bird, but it looks like they are waiting me out. So instead, I'm just going to grab some early damage and grab a shield from my opponent as well. Now, I am the regular Swampert, which means if they Ancient Power, this is not going to be enough to KO. Unfortunately, I have a bad IV Swampert, and I can't survive the next Sucker Punch. I send in the Weezing, they're going to bank the Brave Bird, save switch into a Galarian Corsola, and I don't have a good response available. I'm going to send in Shadow Sableye, shield up what should be a Nightshade, and then throw 6 more and go for the CMP tie. But you may have missed it, they went for a Power Gem. Power Gem does actually do slightly more damage, and had I been paying attention and seen that they Power Gemmed, then I could have done 7 in the move because Power Gem is worse pacing than Nightshade. But instead, I make a pretty big mistake, and giving them some extra energy, definitely not ideal. They're going to send in their final Pokemon, which is Shadow Marowak, and unfortunately, this is a very winnable game for me, but a lot of misplays are going to doom me to a loss. I send in the Weezing going for the Brutal Swing, but it does not knock out, and there's the combo play with the Moltres. And this game was very winnable. Granted, having a better IV Swampert would have put me on a better foot, but even so, I should have been able to pull off this win. Great lead in the next match, leading into Unova Stunfisk. There's a Medicham safe switch, and boy, does this feel familiar. Medicham used to be the top meta contender, the top of the top, as here I actually do take a screenshot there just for old time's sake, and Sableye used to be one of the Pokemon that gave it a tremendous amount of trouble. Here I'm going to go for an undercharge on the foul play because I want to exit with as much residual energy as I possibly can. My opponent now going to send in a Shadow Blastoise. Shadow Blastoise, a very cool pick. They're going to shield at the foul play. Unfortunately, I don't get to foul play number 2, but I can send in the Shadow Galarian Weezing. Again, I do get that one-turn bring in. It's very, very frustrating that it keeps on happening. The new season's been a ton of fun, but my goodness, please fix the one-turn bring in. Unfortunately, Ufisk just has nowhere to run against Swampert. Ufisk with the Discharge rework, I think the Discharge rework helps something like Emolga, which is all about pacing, but for Charjabug and Stunfisk, I think they're actually quite a bit worse this season. So even though I did run a lot of Ufisk last season, I don't think I'll be running it this season nearly as much, just due to the fact that it doesn't seem nearly as strong. Speaking of strong though, look at that farm down from the Swampert. Oh my goodness. Sludge is of course a non-same type attack bonus move, but it really doesn't feel like it against the Shadow Blastoise. That does quite a lot of damage. Sludge number 2 is going to be shielded. They anticipate the switch in, but a Shadow Hydro Cannon will not KO. Galarian Weezing standing strong, firing off the Sludge. A Brutal Swing would have also done the trick as well. Alignment was just extremely in my favor in that matchup. But Medicham, a Pokemon that I haven't really seen much of. Okay, we've got Swampert and we've got Wigglytuff in the next match. Opponent is going to save switch into a Shadow Lapras, and I'm going to respond with my Shadow Sableye. I am a little unsure of how to play out this matchup. Obviously, I could just go for a Power Gem and pick up the knockout. I'm intrigued because I'm wondering if I can potentially go for a foul play and a farm down, and it looks like the answer is no. I actually can't get that farm down. So in the future, I will actually have to fire off a Power Gem, but I'm going to get a ton of energy on the Swampert, which is great. Now I can fire off Sludges at the Wigglytuff. They try for a Peekaboo play, bringing in the Wigglytuff, then switching in the Marowak, but I click the right move. Hydro Cannon connects, and that nearly removes their entire HP bar from that Marowak. In comes the Wigglytuff, and the opponent's got to be a little bit upset to see the Weezing in the back. Had they shielded the Marowak, then Marowak would have been in a great spot against the Weezing, but instead they trusted in the Wigglytuff, and unfortunately Wigglytuff is not going to be able to pull off this win. I actually no-shielded the Icy Wind as well because I was pretty confident that I could get the 2-shield flex here, and it's going to happen. Shadow, Galarian, Weezing. Honestly, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm posting this video in the afternoon, and the morning is a Shadow, Galarian, Weezing feature. It's just wonderful. I love it so much. Great lead in the next match, Swampert into Steelix, but a difficult safe swap. Golisopod as a whole is very neutral into this entire team, so if you see it, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. I chip it with the Sludge, and now I'm going to send in Shadow, Galarian, Weezing. Weezing is going to be hit with the Aqua Jet. That does pretty significant damage, and I'm going to look to pick up the knockout with Sludge. Sludge into Golisopod is going to be shielded, and now if my opponent wants to double shield, they will have the ability to take switch advantage. But honestly, losing switch isn't the worst because I've successfully gotten rid of the Galarian Weezing, so it would be Sableye on the Steelix, which is fine. But my opponent doesn't actually end up playing for swap. Instead, they're going to send in Shadow Dusknoir. Shadow Dusknoir, unfortunately, now going to be met with the Shadow Sableye, but this thing is very, very fast. And it's going to hit quite hard with Shadow Punch. That does some pretty significant damage. In comes the Steelix, and now I get to respond with Swampert. So this is actually a team that I myself featured. If my opponent here had played for swap, things I think could have gotten pretty uncomfortable, just because Shadow Dusknoir can output some serious damage and output it pretty quickly as well. Here with Swampert, I can choose to overfarm and then fire off the Hydro Cannon. It's gonna be close. Can Dusknoir get a farm down here? No, Swampert couldn't survive in the Moltres game, but hangs on here, getting the Hydro Cannon and clutching a win. Nightmare lead, leading Swampert into Credilli, the safe switch into Shadow Sableye. Again, if my opponent stayed in there, it would have been quite nice because I could have made a foul play before they made it to their move thanks to this new 5 pacing, but instead they send in Shadow Drapion, which is still not bad for Sableye. I make the Power Gem, I force the shield. I am running a very attack-weighted Shadow Sableye, and this is actually by design because this Sableye can do some very nice things like winning CMP over Feraligatr, and it also does extra Shadow Claw damage against the Azumarill. Here, once again, I get the 1-turn bring in. My opponent is going to go for the crunch. That does pretty significant damage, and the 1-turn is actually rough here because now I don't get to leave with a Sludge loaded. I'm going to fire off the Hydro Cannon. That's going to pick up the knockout, and in comes Credilli, so I'm going to go for the Hydro Cannon. Sludge would have covered in case they brought in something else, but since it's Credilli, I will just be going for the Hydro Cannon since both are neutral and Hydro Cannon gets same type attack bonus. Credilli is going to be Rock Tombing the Weezing, and in the back is Lapras. Oh boy, this is going to be tough. This is not a good matchup for Weezing, and I'm debuffed. The only good things about this situation are the desync and the switch timers, and the fact that Sableye got me a shield advantage, which I was able to convert into an energy lead. I fire off another Sludge, that's going to get Lapras low, and now I'm going for the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing is going to grab the shield from the opponent, and now I have a tough call to make. They do have the back-to-back moves. I think they're going to throw one Psywave in the move, so I wait, switch, and get it right. I get the catch onto the Swampert. Opponent is going to undercharge the Sparkling Aria and get a farm down. Now it's going to be a race, Weezing versus Lapras, but Weezing with that fast pacing, getting to the Brutal Swing. That's going to KO the Lapras. In comes Credilli. Credilli 4 off a move, and they're just not going to get there. Weezing makes the Sludge, knocking out Credilli, and we overcome absolute nightmare alignment. Picking up a bit of a tough lead in the next match, Swampert against Blastoise. Blastoise, just Hydro Cannons on alignment, so they do end up giving me a free Mud Shot, which I will always take, and now I'm going to go for the Sludge. Judging off how my opponent played it at first, I'm expecting they're just going to throw the second Hydro on alignment as well, so I'm just going to click the Sludge and play to the CMP tie. I do win the CMP tie, double Sludge plus the Mud Shots will not knock out, but the goal is I just want to set up Shadow Sableye. Shadow Sableye can put in a tremendous amount of work if it's up energy, and I get to do exactly that. So now Shadow Sableye is up 2 Shadow Claws and is still basically at full health. Out comes a Shadow Marowak, and I'm very happy that I do have an energy advantage. The opponent throwing on alignment again. Oh my goodness, trainer, please. I'm at back-to-back foul plays. This extra pacing on foul play is incredibly nice. So foul play number 1 is going to grab the shield, and I'm going for foul play number 2. I really hope they decide to let this go, but they do not. They decide to throw energy, and I'm 2 off, which means I can get a move here. It is going to be very, very close. I get the foul play, but they catch onto a Malamar. In that situation, it's very, very difficult. There's only half a second to react, and unfortunately, I did end up throwing the move. Now my only hope is that I can fairy wind down with the Weezing, leave with 2 brutal swings, and be outside of 1 mud slap range. It would have been close, but I can't quite farm them down. And unfortunately, we will take a loss. That was a winnable game, but I just didn't play very well. Hopping into the final match, Swampert into Shadow Drapion. Drapion staying in this matchup. That works out very nicely for me. I'm very happy to take a move, look to farm up, and see what they want to do. Opponent is going to try for a catch onto Lapras. I'm able to hold on to the energy and send in Shadow Sableye. So I basically have 100 energy loaded on the Swampert. Sableye has a great matchup against the Lapras. Sableye farming up here, going for the Power Gem, but man, these counts this new season are throwing me off a little bit. My win rate has still been pretty good overall, but I'm definitely going to need to study these new counts a little bit more because I keep being ever so slightly off, and that unfamiliarity with these new counts, making these slight misplays, can be the difference between winning and losing. Power Gem is going to connect, picking up the KO. If they send in the Drapion, I'm going to bank some energy, I'm 1 off the foul play, and switch back into the Swampert. This is going to grab the shield. Opponent is going to lose the CMP tie. Swampert going to get to pick up the knockout onto the Drapion. In the back is Shadow Golurk, and I have a Shadow Sableye thanks to this lightning fast pacing now. That's 1 off a move, so I get to fire off the foul play, KO the Golurk, and we take the win without having to show our Galarian Weezing. All in all, this team ended up being a lot of fun, and I had very, very positive results with it. I do think that this new pacing on Shadow Sableye is really, really nice. Whether you choose to run the old moveset of Power Gem or whether you do end up opting for Dazzling Gleam, I think will be team or oftentimes just battler's preference dependent. But the big reason why I like Shadow Sableye this season, other than the fact that I just really like Shadow Sableye, is that straight 5 pacing. The ability to, if you lead into something like a superior, send in the Sableye, even if you're down a turn, you're still able to get the foul play before they can make the Frenzy Plant. That is incredibly, incredibly important. Because if you're something that's as glassy as Sableye, you need to make sure you have good pacing. And thanks to this foul play rework, I think there's some Pokemon that don't particularly care for the foul play rework, but I think Sableye is a really big winner, because especially if you're the Shadow, you're already going to hit hard. You just need to be able to hit very quickly, and that's now what Shadow Sableye is able to do. If you want to try out the Swampert Shadow Sableye core and don't have a Weezing or want to run something else, the main goal of a third with this team is you want something that's going to make every grass type you run into regret the day they were born. So Galarian Weezing with Sludge fits that bill. Though Tactical, when he was streaming, was running the Swampert Shadow Sableye core, but he actually used Corviknight as a third with Iron Head and Payback, so that's an option as well. I imagine most flyers could do a pretty decent job in this role. Your goal is just you want something to hard counter those grass types. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.